The soft hum of Medbay 7 was as constant as the artificial atmosphere circulating through the station, a soothing background noise that Nurse Varel barely noticed anymore. The bioluminescent panels overhead bathed the examination room in a cool, sterile glow, the light shifting in gentle pulses to simulate the planetary cycles of Xilari's twin suns. It was meant to be comforting. It was not. Varel adjusted her ocular lenses, magnifying her vision to better inspect the unconscious human laid out on the examination table. Lieutenant James Carter had been brought in less than an hour ago, after what the engineering team described as a mild reactor explosion. Varel had quickly learned that humans had a peculiar definition of the word mild. Carter's uniform was singed, revealing patches of bruised, scraped, and thoroughly battered skin. His left forearm had taken the brunt of the accident, a long gash running along the muscle already crusting with dried human blood. Nothing unusual. Humans were fragile creatures, held together more by stubbornness than by any real structural integrity. Varel moved efficiently, her four-fingered hands gliding over his wounds as she worked. A dose of dermal regeneration gel, a spritz of sterilizing agent, a check of his vitals, all within normal parameters. Good. And then she reached further down his body. She stopped, tilted her head. Her ocular lenses clicked as she zoomed in, then out again, as if the discrepancy in her vision was some kind of malfunction. But no. The anomaly remained. There, between his legs, a wound. Varel's pulse quickened. Had something attacked him there? A malfunctioning tool? A rogue piece of shrapnel? The wound was oddly uniform, symmetrical, and worst of all, it didn't seem fresh. There was no bleeding, no signs of recent trauma. But that was impossible. Wounds did not just sit there permanently. Her training took over. She grabbed a scanner, her hands moving with practiced precision, despite the rising panic in her chest. She ran the device over the area, waiting for the results. No signs of recent trauma. No evidence of foreign pathogens. No necrotic tissue. That didn't make sense. Varel swallowed, her three hearts thudding in confusion. There was only one explanation. The wound had been there for a long time, perhaps even since birth. But if that was the case, then how had this human survived? The implications were too horrifying to consider. Her fingers hovered over her emergency communicator. She had never called the chief medical officer in a panic before. She prided herself on handling even the most bizarre injuries with professional detachment. But this required immediate intervention. She pressed the button. "Doctor, I think this human has been gravely injured. There's an open wound, and it looks permanent." Silence, then static, then laughter. Dr. Albrecht's voice came through, choked with amusement. "That's normal, Nurse Varel. We need to talk." Varel's brow ridges twitched. Normal? How could a species possibly consider a wound of this nature normal? She looked down at the patient, unconscious and blissfully unaware of the existential crisis he had just given her. If humans thought this was normal, then she was deeply concerned for their entire species. Dr. Albrecht was still laughing. It had been a full 20 seconds now. That was roughly 15 seconds longer than Varel found acceptable. She tightened her grip on the communicator, her patience wearing thin. "Doctor, if you could kindly explain what exactly is so amusing about my medical emergency, I would greatly appreciate it." Another chuckle, followed by the unmistakable sound of a human trying, and failing, to compose themselves. "Varel, it's not an emergency. I promise. What you found is completely normal." Varel narrowed her eyes at the unconscious human on the examination table. "Doctor, I have just discovered what appears to be a chronic unhealed wound in a highly sensitive region of this patient's anatomy. If you are telling me this is normal, then I have some very serious questions about human evolutionary design." A sigh. Then, mercifully, Dr. Albrecht's voice shifted into something resembling professionalism. All right. I can explain. Stay where you are. I'm on my way." Varel deactivated the communicator and exhaled sharply. She was not easily rattled. She had performed emergency surgeries under artificial gravity failures. She had resuscitated a feral symbiote whose host body had been drifting through space for an unsettling amount of time. And yet this bizarre, unfathomable anomaly had left her questioning everything she knew about human anatomy. She turned back to Carter. His breathing was steady, his vitals strong. A perfectly healthy, if slightly battered, human male. How was that possible? How had he survived this? Her mind whirled through possibilities. A mutation? A genetic defect? Some sort of strange external biological structure that had fused to his body over time? No, that was absurd. She had seen human males before. They all had similar anatomical structures. Wait. They all had it. Realization dawned in slow, creeping horror. She turned right as the medbay doors slid open with a hiss. Dr. Albrecht, a middle-aged man with perpetually tired eyes and a lab coat that had seen better days, strode in with an expression that hovered between exasperation and barely contained amusement. "I got here as fast as I could," he said, out of breath. Which, by the way, is the first time in my career I've ever had to rush to explain basic human biology to someone. Varel folded her arms, her usually composed demeanor struggling against a mix of indignation and deep concern. "Doctor, I need answers. Now." Dr. Albrecht pinched the bridge of his nose. "All right. First things first. What you saw is not a wound." Varel gestured at Carter, still unconscious. "Doctor, with all due respect, it looks like a wound. A very concerning permanent one." Dr. Albrecht sighed. "It's not. It's called genitalia." A pause. A very long pause. Varel's brain processed this information with the efficiency of a crashing navigation system. Genitalia. Yes. She blinked. "And this serves a function?" Dr. Albrecht coughed. "Reproduction." Another pause. Varel's 3 hearts beat in perfect unison as her mind recalibrated. "Doctor," she said slowly, "are you telling me that humans reproduce via an external, constantly exposed biological structure?" Dr. Albrecht winced. "Well, when you put it that way, that is terrible design." Albrecht gave a half-smile. "Not my fault. Take it up with evolution." Varel ran a hand down her face. "I had assumed humans reproduced through some sort of controlled mitosis, or possibly spore dispersal. But this?" She shook her head. "This is absurd." Albrecht shrugged. "Welcome to human biology. Frankly, I'm impressed we've made it this far." Varel's frustration simmered. "And you never thought to mention this in our medical training? I have spent years studying human physiology. Not once did our shared medical database think to include this crucial piece of information." Albrecht rubbed the back of his neck. "Well, we figured it was obvious." Varel's jaw tightened. "Doctor, I belong to a species that regenerates limbs at will and communicates through bioluminescent pheromone shifts. Do I look like someone who would assume anything about human anatomy?" "Fair point." Varel exhaled, composing herself. "So, this is standard for all human males?" Albrecht nodded. "Yep." "And human females?" "Different, but thematically similar." Varel narrowed her eyes. "I am going to need more data." Albrecht chuckled. "I highly recommend you do your research privately." Varel crossed her arms. "I will be filing an official complaint with the Interstellar Medical Exchange regarding this glaring omission in human biological documentation." Albrecht smirked. "Good luck. Every species has its anatomical quirks. You should hear how confused humans were when they found out Zolari hearts sync up. One of our surgeons thought it was a glitch." Varel let out a weary sigh. "Fine. I suppose I must accept this new information, as horrifying as it may be." She glanced at Carter. "But I maintain that this is a design flaw." Albrecht grinned. "A lot of people would agree with you." As Carter remained blissfully unaware of the very serious medical debate happening over his unconscious body, Varel made a silent vow. She would never be caught off guard like this again. And the first step toward ensuring that? A very thorough personal research session. Privately. Lieutenant James Carter awoke to the distinct sensation of being watched. Not the casual, passing kind of observation, but the kind that sent a shiver down his spine. The kind that suggested someone was either about to perform a medical procedure or steal his kidneys. His vision was blurry, but as his eyes adjusted to the sterile glow of Medbay 7, he made out the unmistakable figure of Nurse Varel standing beside his bed, arms folded, brow ridges furrowed in deep contemplation. Her bioluminescent markings pulsed faintly. A Zalari trait he'd learned meant she was either concentrating or plotting something unsettling. Morning? Carter croaked, his throat dry. Varel did not return the greeting. Instead, she tilted her head, and with what Carter could only describe as deep scientific scrutiny said, "Fascinating." Carter immediately regretted waking up. He pushed himself up slightly, wincing as sore muscles protested. "Okay, I don't like that tone. I really don't like that tone." He glanced down at himself, relieved to see that he was still fully clothed. Well, mostly. His uniform had been cut away in places to treat his injuries, but nothing too indecent. Did something happen? Varel didn't answer right away. She was still looking at him with the same unnerving curiosity, as if he were some kind of rare lab specimen. Finally, she said, "Lieutenant Carter, I must ask you a deeply important question." Carter hesitated. "Okay." Her glowing eyes locked onto his with intense focus. "How have you people survived?" Carter blinked. What?" "I have been conducting research," Varel continued, her voice filled with what sounded like genuine distress. "Extensive research, and I have come to a troubling conclusion. Humans should not exist." Carter rubbed his temples, already exhausted. "I feel like I'm missing context." Dr. Albrecht, who had apparently been listening from across the room, chuckled. "She means biologically, Carter. She's struggling to accept certain anatomical facts." Carter shot the doctor a wary look. "What kind of anatomical facts?" "The how do humans reproduce, and why is it the worst idea in evolutionary history kind," Albrecht said, smirking. Carter groaned. "Oh God, someone told her." "I discovered it," Varel corrected. "By accident, and it has raised many concerns." She took a step closer, her voice lowering, as if she were revealing classified information. "Did you know that humans have their reproductive organs externally exposed at all times?" Carter flushed. I mean, yeah?" Varel's eyes narrowed. "This is illogical. Your species has fragile skin, weak bones, and a general lack of natural armor. And yet you have chosen to leave one of your most critical biological functions vulnerable to environmental hazards, predatory threats, and frankly, gravity." Carter opened his mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. "I mean, when you put it like that—" "It is poor engineering," Varel continued, exasperated. "At least other species have the sense to protect such vital structures. Zalari reproductive systems are internal, safely tucked away behind muscle and cartilage. Even Andronians, whose limbs detach when startled, keep their reproductive organs in reinforced exoskeletal chambers." Carter stared. "I'm sorry. Did you just say detach when startled?" Varel waved a hand dismissively. "Irrelevant. The point is, you humans are practically asking for injuries. And yet somehow, your species thrives. This defies reason. It defies logic. It defies basic survival instincts." Carter rubbed his face. "Look, I'm not saying our design is perfect, but it's what we've got. And considering we've spread across multiple galaxies, I'd say we've done pretty well for ourselves." Varel sighed, clearly unconvinced. "I am filing an official complaint with the Interstellar Medical Exchange. Your biological databases should have included this information. The fact that it was omitted from my training is an oversight of catastrophic proportions." Dr. Albrecht chuckled. "Good luck with that. They're still debating whether or not to include the Fral mating rituals in the database, and that's been an argument for 50 years. Carter frowned. "Do I even want to know?" "No," Varel and Albrecht said in unison. A long silence stretched between them. Then finally, Carter sighed. "All right, fine. I get it. Our anatomy is weird. Can I go now?" Varel hesitated, as if debating whether or not to keep him for further study, but eventually she relented. "Your injuries have healed. You are free to leave. But I strongly suggest that you humans reconsider your evolutionary design choices." Carter snorted. "Yeah, I'll, get right on that." As he stood to leave, he caught Albrecht stifling a laugh. He sighed. "This is never going to die, is it?" "Oh no," Albrecht said, grinning. "This is station history now." Carter groaned and walked out of medbay, already dreading the jokes he was about to endure. Varel, meanwhile, pulled up a research terminal. If no one had ever questioned human biology before, she was certainly going to be the first. Carter had barely stepped out of medbay before the first joke landed. "Hey, Lieutenant," called Ensign Braga from engineering, grinning as he leaned against the corridor wall. "Heard you gave Nurse Varel the scare of her life?" Carter groaned. "News travels fast?" "Oh yeah," Braga said, barely containing his laughter. "The official report just says anatomical misunderstanding, but I got the real story from Dr. Albrecht." Carter pinched the bridge of his nose. "Great. Fantastic. So this is my legacy now?" Braga patted him on the shoulder. "Look on the bright side. You're now officially the first human to traumatize a Zalari medical professional without getting injured in the process." "Glad to be a pioneer," Carter muttered. As he walked through the station, it became painfully clear that everyone had heard. A group of Andronians snickered as he passed, their eye stalks wiggling in what he assumed was amusement. A Zalari technician turned bioluminescent green, their species equivalent of barely suppressed laughter. And worst of all, the station's AI, Cynthia, chimed in over the intercom. "Lieutenant Carter," she said, her usually neutral tone carrying just the faintest hint of amusement. "I have compiled relevant human medical data in case any other Zalari staff members experience confusion. Would you like me to display it publicly for the crew's education?" Carter groaned. "Cynthia, I swear to—" "Kidding," the AI said. "Mostly." He stormed off, making a mental note to never use the medbay again unless he was actively dying. Meanwhile, in the medbay, Nurse Varel was still deep in research mode. Her console screen was cluttered with multiple hollow panels, each displaying various diagrams of human anatomy. She had delved far deeper than was necessary, uncovering facts about human biology that frankly made her question whether evolution had simply given up when designing the species. She turned to Dr. Albrecht, who had remained behind out of sheer amusement. "Doctor," she said gravely, "humans are an absolute disaster of biological engineering." Albrecht sipped his coffee, completely unbothered. "Yep. They have weak spines prone to chronic pain. Their entire species is reliant on a single fragile organ to pump oxygenated fluid through their bodies. One catastrophic failure and that's it. Their sensory organs are poorly protected, and worst of all, their reproductive process is needlessly complicated and inefficient." Albrecht shrugged. "And yet somehow we've colonized half the galaxy." Varel narrowed her eyes. "That is what confuses me most. Your species should not have survived natural selection. And yet, here you are, thriving." Albrecht leaned back. "It's because we're stubborn, and reckless, and really good at improvising." Varel sighed, rubbing her temples. "I suppose there is something to be said for that, and I will admit, I admire the resilience." Albrecht grinned. "See? Now you're getting it." She glanced back at the screen, her luminous eyes still filled with skeptical curiosity. "I still plan to submit my research findings to the Interstellar Medical Exchange. If nothing else, future Zalari physicians should be warned." "Good luck," Albrecht said. "Just don't let the Andronians see your report. They're already convinced humans are just hyper-intelligent jellyfish pretending to be mammals." Varel paused. "That would explain a great deal." Albrecht laughed. Carter had just made it back to his quarters, ready to bury himself under his blankets and pretend this entire day never happened, when his communicator buzzed. He groaned and picked it up. Please tell me this is not another anatomy joke. Varel's voice came through. I wanted to thank you, Lieutenant Carter. Carter frowned. For what? For surviving. That made him pause. He sat up, frowning. You're welcome? Varel continued, her tone more contemplative than before. Despite everything I have learned, despite the absurd design flaws, the biological inefficiencies, the frankly alarming vulnerability of your anatomy, you humans persist. You survive against overwhelming odds. I still do not fully understand how, but I have gained a new respect for your kind. Carter blinked. Huh. He scratched the back of his head, then smirked. So what you're saying is, humans are a miracle of science? Varel's voice was dry. Number, I am saying you are a biological anomaly that should not function as well as it does. Carter chuckled. I'll take it. There was a pause. Then Varel added, I have also scheduled mandatory educational sessions for all Zilari medical personnel regarding human reproductive anatomy. We will not be caught off guard again. Carter groaned. Oh, come on. Good night, Lieutenant Carter. The line disconnected. Carter flopped back onto his bed, staring at the ceiling. He had survived explosions, deep space firefights, and emergency crash landings. But this was going to haunt him forever. And somehow, he was completely fine with that.